Hey there, everybody. Brian Ward here with another episode of the Arkham Sessions. With me, as always, the psychologist to the superheroes, superheroines, and supervillains, Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
Hi there.
Hello. Another episode this week. This is 2 in 1 week. I like it. I like these weeks.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I thought we would really get a good opportunity to talk about a villain that we have not yet been introduced to in Batman the Animated Series so far. It's taken 40 episodes, but it's finally time, much to the elation of our good friend, Mr. David Wise. David has been waiting for us to get to this episode, and now we get to oblige him finally.
Well, because he's the writer of this episode.
He is, in fact, the writer of this episode, and the director is Eric Radomski. But you know, David has written a number of good episodes and has contributed some good stories. His first episode of the season was The Clock King.
Right.
And you know, I don't know. I like David's episodes.
He seems to write good, intelligent villains, right?
Yeah.
These are both the Clock King and the Riddler are quite they're quite devious, but they're really they're deep, you know. They have good backstories and they're interesting. And
he has a tendency to throw in a lot of sort of pop culture references. You know, when he did The Clock King, he even told us that the ending was sort of his homage to the Castle of Cagliostro. And
bless you.
Yeah. Thank you. And so, I do like his episodes a lot. And I'm glad we're finally able to talk about, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich?
Hey. Oh, that's the name of the episode.
Or I'm just asking. This episode introduces us to Edward Nygma.
I get it. Enigma, meaning a puzzle or riddle.
Not to be confused with a forensic scientist of some kind working for GCPD. This is the real Edward Nygma. This is an Edward Nygma who has designed something or created something and has been fired. So, you know, that's kind of the story that we're often given with Edward Nygma.
Right.
And in this particular case, Mr. Nygma has created a video game called The Riddle of the Minotaur. So he's a big fan of the mythology. By the way, speaking of minotaurs, the Minotaur, of course, is a reference to mythology and the labyrinth, the story of the labyrinth, where he is in the center of the labyrinth. But one of the things that I noticed in the very beginning of the episode is we see this grand cubicle farm. And the cubicles all look very labyrinthine. It's very interesting. I like the visual, and so it's a nice way of sort of foreshadowing what will eventually happen over the course of this episode. And in the episode, he is basically wanting to get credit and royalties for this video game that he has created. And this video game has basically become the most popular game in the world right now. It is, certainly Robin likes it. Dick Grayson is playing it and getting pretty far in the game. But
look, this isn't like the Angry Birds of their time. It's a game that involves more mental skill. There's problem solving. Robin, Dick Grayson even mentions, you have to get through this maze, but you have to solve these word problems.
Yeah. And if you get them wrong, the hand of fate comes along, picks you up, and drops you someplace else in the maze. And, I think it's these particular types of games, I certainly enjoyed them growing up. Usually they were computer games, but going through high school and college, I enjoyed playing them, and I can see that Nygma enjoyed making them. But he wants his payola. He wants to make money for that. They, of course, say that he's a work for hire. Now, it's interesting that they use the term work for hire because this is very familiar to people who write comics these days. With
and comics related episodes to shows.
Yeah, because the term work for hire is thrown about in order to prevent having to pay people who have created characters or have co-created characters. You don't want to give them the credit, and so you say they were on salary, they were on staff, they created something for you, they got paid for that as they normally would, so they're not going to get residuals for Batman. So the Bill Fingers of the world, the Jack Kirbys of the world. And so I think it's great that we're watching this episode right on the heels of the Jack Kirby estate winning the, settling for a very pretty penny. But unfortunately, Nigma didn't get that opportunity. He is, in fact, fired. He is let go. And decides to take his revenge 2 years later as his boss, the man who fired him, Daniel Mockridge, is trying to pitch the franchise to Bruce Wayne, who wants to create a theme park in Gotham, and he basically wants to bring this property to Gotham because he thinks that it will sort of revitalize the industry.
Right. And, there's so many decrepit, abandoned amusement parks in Gotham. It's probably not a bad idea to maybe renovate one of those.
Yeah. And in the middle of this, Mockridge notices across one of the electronic banners outside a riddle.
Why do multi-million-dollar deals break down in the wasteland?
Do you know the answer to that, Drea?
I do not.
No, it's unfortunate. I was hoping that your intellect would actually help us move along in this. It's a good thing, actually.
No, clearly I'm not smart enough to figure that one out.
Bruce Wayne, however, is smart enough. Daniel Mockridge leaves in a hurry, and Bruce notices the sign. He's sitting there with Lucius Fox, of course, and he notices the sign and says that it's got to have a double meaning.
Doesn't Mockridge own a club downtown called the Wasteland?
So Daniel goes to this club, and there waiting for him is Edward Nigma, by the way.
Redhead.
Very, very redhead.
Well, but may I say, in the beginning of the episode, you see him in the offices. He's very well dressed. He's sharp. He's smart. He's
bumbling.
He's a nice looking guy.
No, when we first see him, he's wearing suspenders and he's bumbling. His head is down. He's locked out of his office, but he's bumping into the office door, trying to get through.
Look, I didn't say that he was coordinated, but I said he was attractive.
Okay.
Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, it might be just you. And but now he is looking much more like the Riddler that we are aware, better acquainted with. Green suit, purple question marks, a mask. And he gives Mockridge a riddle of his own. He gives him a set of rings. It's basically, looks very similar to a magician's set of rings. And as Mockridge is sitting there trying to figure the interlocking rings, he then suddenly, for lack of a better word, cuffs himself in them. He is trapped inside the rings. And Nigma basically says he doesn't want money. He doesn't want fame. He just wants Mockridge. And now he's got him. And that's when Batman and Robin come crashing through what looks like an elaborate stained glass ceiling.
Oh, yeah. They both crash down through that glass ceiling. There are other ways, I'm sure, to sneak into this club.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't even try to do it. It was straight up like, we're going to crash through this stained glass ceiling. And, they began to unleash a great deal of property damage. You would think that just that ceiling alone is going to be expensive. But then the place goes up, in flames. Fire is set in this place. So I got to think that a lot of it had to do with Batman and Robin showing up. I don't know.
Collateral damage.
I guess so. But, but Batman actually, informs the gang that he is fully aware of who the Riddler is.
The Riddler? What is that, Nigma? Some kind of joke on your name?
Nigma?
My. Can we actually have a brain beneath that pointy cowl of ours?
It's great to see these two characters face to face because they truly do have, if not equal, I would certainly say very close intellect with one another.
Right. I think that the Riddler knows that the person who will most likely crack his codes and solve his riddles is Batman.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I was amused by was the fact that Nigma gives Batman basically an ultimatum. He says that he can save Mockridge or he can save Robin, who is then trapped inside of a very large version of the Chinese finger cuffs trick, the game there, and Robin can't get out. Batman's gotta save him.
He just hauls him on his shoulder and runs out of the building.
Yeah. You would you gotta wonder if maybe he just stands Robin up and tells him to run forward. If he could then just get out on his own, but no, he saves Robin, and as a result, Nigma takes Mockridge away, and Batman then has to find him. So Batman is sitting there trying to figure out where Mockridge has been taken, and that's when all the traffic lights begin to flicker on and off. But they're not just flickering in a random pattern. They are flickering in Morse code. What does the Morse code say?
When is the Minotaur's owner as high as an elephant's high?
Clearly you know the answer to that one, Drea.
No, I do not.
Oh.
Wait. No.
Forgive me, because now we're going back to like Batman 66 methodology of figuring out riddles. Very much like, the ocean, the sea for Catwoman, so, I mean, it's very much, it kind of goes in that direction where it's like, when is the Minotaur's owner as high as the elephant's eye? Well, what's as high as the elephant's eye? Corn, Batman says.
Wait, what?
Corn? Corn. And what's another word for corn? Maize. Oh. Well, Mockridge is in the amusement park. It's like, wow,
I don't know that I would have ever figured that out.
I'm not sure anybody should have been able to figure that out.
When are elephants in cornfields?
Well, of course, that particular line comes from a song. Batman makes a comment that it was a song written before Robin's time. And that song is actually, I don't remember the name of the song, but it's certainly from the show Oklahoma, where the line is, the corn is as high as an elephant's eye. The corn is growing brilliantly. It's fantastic. It's as high as an elephant's eye.
So this is from the musical Oklahoma.
Yes, it's from the musical Oklahoma.
So that's interesting because we never quite know what time period we're in, and he says it's before
Robin's time. Yeah. But so they go to the amusement park, and sure enough, Nigma has Mockridge sitting there in the amusement park, and he is in the center of the labyrinth. And he is tied to what's basically an altar, and there is a golden minotaur with a scimitar ready to come down on him. Now, Batman and Robin have 10 minutes to get to the center. Now, the labyrinth is almost an identical replica of the actual video game, and Robin has been playing this video game. He knows it pretty well. Now, he's never gotten to the center, but Robin also announces that actually no one has ever made it to the center. And there are certain things that you've got to do. You've got to go through the maze, but then you also have to avoid things that block your path, like griffins. And the griffins come in, large mechanical griffins, but they're not just there to block you. They actually shoot flames, and they try to roast you alive, which is a an addition that Nigma has added on for the real life version. Then you've got the Hand of Fate, which is a very elaborate, almost remote controlled, gigantic golden hand that comes in and scoops you up and takes you to a different side of the maze if you get something wrong. Now, they encounter this a little later on, but we're going to take you through the riddles that they are posed first. So after Batman and Robin escape their encounter with the Griffins, they come across this sign that simply says, "Losers ahead." And as they turn the corner, suddenly these blades, it's very Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. These blades come across, they roll under, and, Batman says,
Losers ahead. I don't know what's worse, the traps or the puns.
the next riddle is which way to the eating place, and it is in Arabic. It's a riddle that is in Arabic. Batman can't read it, but he's got this computer on the top of his hand that is very elaborate, and it looks like it should go pretty deep down into his hand, but apparently it's just on the surface. But
is it like the Nintendo hand controller?
it's kind of power glovey, but it's not.
The Power Glove.
But it's not on his forearm. It's actually on the top of his hand, and it seems to go fairly deep down in there. I don't know where he's hiding this computer. And what happens when he backhands someone? Does it like bust the top of the? Does it bust the computer? Does he have to be very careful?
Right, and I'm surprised that he's allowed to have that, since he wasn't allowed to have his utility belt.
Well, presumably the Riddler didn't know he had it. But it translates the Arabic for him, and the Arabic says, which way to the eating place? You've got two paths. You can go left or you can go right. Robin says he doesn't know the answer. Just pick a direction. So they just randomly pick the left.
Some help. Now, Robin has been playing this game for how long, and he's not helpful?
Yeah, he's really not been much help so far. Except he has acknowledged that, he understands that the Griffins are there. He understands that the Griffins are there in order to block your path. But he clearly didn't know that they were going to breathe fire at them. He knows that the Hand of Fate is coming. And they realize that they chose the wrong direction when the Hand of Fate comes down and tries to scoop them up and take them out. They avoid that, so they don't go anywhere. But the Hand of Fate does, in fact, come through. And they run back. Well, this is when Batman is like,
Of course! We went to the left, but in the Arab world, you always eat with your right hand.
that's not really a riddle, but that's very specific knowledge that you have to have. And I don't know if it's all of the Arab world. I know that the Muslim religion, you eat with your right hand. So maybe it is all Arab parts of the world. But yeah, so
that's not so much a riddle as it's kind of putting two pieces of information together and jumping to this wild conclusion.
Now, I have to ask, Drea, we've sort of seen, for as little help as Robin is, Batman doesn't really seem to be all there at this point. He randomly... When was the last time you ever saw Batman just randomly choose a side in which to run? I realize they're on a time, they've got a countdown going, but he seems like he's not as calculated as he usually is. Batman would sit there and probably figure this out before choosing a side, but he just randomly ran left.
I'm not supposed to do this, but I can reference Scott Snyder's recent story in the Batman comics.
You totally can't.
I know, I'm not allowed to do this, but there was a recent kind of head-to-head between the Riddler and Batman, and he was also in this predicament where it was a race against time, and lives were clearly at stake, and he engaged in the riddle game. So I don't know why in this case he's kind of impulsive and just kind of goes in any direction.
Yeah. It seems weird to me. It seems out of character for Batman to just go willy-nilly. He's always been really good at matching wits. And it turns out that it's more along one of those situations where he just says to himself, "Of course," and then kicks himself in the butt when he realizes that I should have known all along. That's just not Batman. But that's just one of the riddles where Batman does that. They then come across another riddle, and it is a door that is locked, and there are 3 keys hanging next to the door. One of them says A, one of them says C, and one of them says D. Now, Batman picks up the D key and tries to use it. Again, it's random. He's like, Robin, you've played this game. Which key are we supposed to use? Robin doesn't know. So Batman he's like, we're just going to take this one. And he tries it. 2 razor-sharp blades come flying at them from down at the other end of the corridor and go straight into the wall. Well, then Batman is like, all right, let's try A then. Robin is the one who stops him.
No, wait! Turn that key and there'll be 3 blades.
But how do you...
It's the C key. Trust me. It's a musical puzzle. The key of D has 2 sharps. The key of A has 3.
But the key of C has no sharps.
So Batman chooses the C key, uses it. Sure enough, the door opens. Robin figured out that riddle.
That's cool. I like that one.
I like it, but again, where is Batman's intellect? Batman isn't going up against the Riddler in this particular episode. It's more like, I don't know, pick a key, any key. Oh, Robin, you've worked that one out? Okay. Well,
maybe this is part of Robin's training. He's not going to excel. He's not really going to push himself unless Batman puts him in the position to do so.
Would Batman choose to put Robin in this position when they only have 10 minutes to save a human life?
Because it's realistic. It's a pressure that actually exists.
Okay, then let's break down the psychology of a man who will decide to put the life of another human being into the hands in order to train his ward.
That makes perfect sense to me. The man that they're trying to save is the owner of this company, and it's clear that Bruce Wayne from the beginning of this episode isn't necessarily fond of him.
So what you're saying is Bruce is willing to let this man die.
Well, I think at the last minute he probably would step in, but
you were just digging and digging and digging. You are totally a Batman apologist on all.
No. I think that David Wise was onto something here with kind of putting Robin into a position where he would have to solve many of these riddles.
Okay. I have no idea where to take that one. So Batman actually then makes a wrong decision on purpose so that the hand of fate will come down and pick him up. He jumps on board, he rips into it, he reprograms it so that now he can basically control the hand of fate. He is now flying the hand of fate. And he goes along and he picks up Robin, and the 2 of them fly to the center of the maze.
That is grand scale cheating, Batman. You're not allowed to tamper with the hand of fate.
I don't believe in fate.
He takes control of his own fate, so it's a little bit of a metaphor there.
Yeah.
Batman then has only a few seconds to save Mockridge by answering the Minotaur's riddle.
I have billions of eyes, yet I live in darkness. I have millions of ears, yet only 4 lobes. I have no muscle, yet I rule 2 hemispheres. What am I?
Drea?
The human brain.
Oh, very, very good. That is correct. That is the correct answer. The Minotaur puts the scimitar down. Presumably, Batman has won. Riddler's not okay with that. Riddler basically says, no, Minotaur, you're going to stand up. You're going to chase them out. You're going to defeat them. Batman's got a riddle of his own, though.
How do you take out a Minotaur with a single blow? Like this.
Presses some buttons on his little palm computer, and the hand of fate comes along and destroys the Minotaur robot. Riddler, however, informs them that regardless of the fact that they have won, he's not even in the amusement park. He's in an airplane, and he's like, by the time you get out of there, I'll already be out of the city. So, suckers, later. Which I really like. I like that they won, but didn't win. The Riddler can't, he's not on his way to Arkham.
Right.
You probably don't like that as much because you wouldn't be able to treat him while there.
Well, I understand that not every villain can get caught and be put in Arkham. But you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot to learn by having them there. We know they're going to escape. We know every villain escapes from Arkham because they have to go after Batman again. But there is that period of time where they're in Arkham that we could learn from them.
Right. Now, it's interesting. One thing that I noticed when Batman solved the Minotaur's riddle was he then, and I realize this is for a cartoon, I realize that Batman has to let everyone in the audience know how he came up with this answer. But from the perspective of someone in that world, Batman has just answered the riddle and then feels the need to tell Edward Nygma how he figured it out.
That's simple. The human brain. It has billions of optic and auditory nerves, 4 lobes and 2 hemispheres, and it's the only thing Edward Nygma respects.
This actually leads into sort of what I want to address with this particular episode. We are witnessing a battle of egos, are we not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And from a psychological perspective, what is the ego and how does it relate to our discussion with this episode?
Well, I think, when we talk about the Riddler, he wants someone to take on the challenge, right? He wants an opponent that's nearly as smart as he. And what greater success than to stump someone like the Batman?
Sure.
So I think that both the Riddler and the Batman are, I'm not going to say there's enjoyment from both ends, but there's clearly an even match. Mm-hmm. And there are certain parts, of course, during the getting through the maze where I'm not sure why Batman makes some of those decisions and seems more impulsive. But ultimately, there is some gain from both ends for participating in this. Because there are ways that Batman and Robin could, just completely dismiss the whole maze. Like, they actually engaged in that.
Sure.
And this happens often, again, outside of this episode. The Batman often participates in the Riddler's, antics and games. He's willing to participate in that.
That's actually a good point. Let's talk about all the other episodes where we have watched Batman voluntarily participate in these supervillains' various puzzles and schemes, and Batman has even played chess, sort of metaphorically speaking, with certain characters where he has actually disguised himself as someone who could hire someone who they then go and set up elaborate pranks that Batman has to participate in. And he is someone who can't say no to one of these challenges.
Right.
Like, Batman could have easily flown over the maze with the Batwing. Right.
He can completely bypass this entire game and save this man. But there's something about the challenge. There's something about participating in it that he gets something out. And there's some gain from that.
So take your love of Batman out of the equation, just for a minute. Let's look at this from a realistic point of view. Is this a fault of Batman's? His inability to not participate in the challenge as it is presented to him?
What do you mean a fault? I mean, is it harmful to somebody? Is it harmful to him?
I'm saying, is it a personality fault? You've got a man whose life hangs in the balance. You've only got 10 minutes, and yet you choose to play the game when you've probably got a number of ways in which you could save the man on the altar, and in less than 10 minutes. But he willfully engages.
Right.
Now, again, I know it's a 22-minute show, so he's got to do it. But just from the perspective of someone standing next to the man, is there something wrong with someone who can't deny that challenge, the impulse to actually play the game?
I don't know that when you say if there's something wrong, I tend to go toward, is it harmful to that person or harmful to someone else? That's what I usually think about.
Yeah, the man that's sitting there on the altar with the golden scimitar hanging above him.
And again, I would argue that in the end, Batman would always ensure that person's safety, even if it means, prolonging that risk, just so that he can engage in something that he finds some kind of pleasure in. That there is something about, I would say that it is part of his ego, that it's this kind of narcissistic aspect of him that he, no one else can do this except him, and he's willing to take that challenge.
I know I didn't go to school nearly as long as you, but I think this is our first opportunity to drop ourselves back into the antisocial personality disorder. Is he or
Why?
isn't he? Because I've learned a number of things from you over the course of this podcast, and he's a risk taker. He doesn't really seem to take Mockridge's life into account. He realizes that he's there to save him, but he doesn't think of all the ways that he could do it quicker, easier. Think about it this way. If he had not taken the full 10 minutes, maybe the Riddler would have been catchable. Or, most likely, Riddler was never in the amusement park while Batman was there, but Batman could have tried to figure that out. He could have done something to stop him, but instead he played along. And I think if you are... say a firefighter walks into a burning building and there's someone on the top floor. They don't put out the other embers knowing that they've got time.
Sure. No, I see what you're saying, that it's not as heroic. What he's doing is not heroic. It's a little bit...
It's feeding his ego.
No, it's absolutely... It's self-indulgent.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. I think that, stay with me on this one. Part of this, I guess... part of this interest in participating in the Riddler's games and schemes is that it kind of gets Batman into the mind of the villain. And I think there's something about participating in that is subversive.
Okay.
And he wants a part of that. It's this kind of anti-hero almost, and I would agree that this is somewhat of a flaw, that he has this fascination with villains. He has this fascination with breaking rules and doing things his own way. And it's almost like he wants to kind of cozy up to that and experience almost, I guess, in a secondary way.
I have to ask, when this is all said and done, does Robin go back to finish playing the game? Like, does he try to conquer it, or does he decide to put that down? I guess if you were in a life-sized version of it and you literally fought against these things, maybe playing a game version of it might not be nearly as fulfilling to you.
Or it might be traumatic to have to go back to that. I think that the video games were somewhat... I don't know. Did you get the sense that the video game, that there was a negative message around that Dick playing video games, and then that leading to this real life video game was a negative thing? No,
I mean, it's clearly Batman used Robin's knowledge of the game to help them get as far as they did. Batman didn't seem to have a problem with it. Now, clearly, Batman had never played the game. He Batman ain't got time for that. But, he was certainly aware of the game. He was aware of how popular the game was. He wanted to bid on the rights to bring the intellectual property to Gotham. Right. So I don't think anyone saw the game as being negative. Now, that being said, I don't know that Batman is in a position to decide what a negative and positive is after watching him put poor Daniel Mockridge's. And this actually leads into my next question for you, because at the end of the episode, Robin acknowledges that it sort of sucks that Mockridge actually got to pocket $10 million out of the, acquisition of the company, the game rights in the company or whatever. Mockridge came out with money, and Robin acknowledges that that's not cool. This guy just got rewarded for mistreating Nigma in the beginning.
Mockridge may have his money, but he won't be sleeping well.
As he's saying that, we see Mockridge with a shotgun locking multiple locks on his door, absolutely terrified out of his mind. And you realize that this has actually been going on for months, because this isn't the next day. They are now, the deal is done. Lots of things are happening. The company is coming to town. It's going to be a boom. A lot of people are going to be in work. It's clearly been going on for months.
How much is a good night's sleep worth?
Talk about the state of Mockridge, and the fact that Batman probably could have prevented a little bit of that trauma if he had just moved a little quicker.
You're blaming Batman for his trauma. Well, it's interesting because we see his nighttime ritual. He's checking locks. He's creeping around, checking corners, checking under the bed. He's got this shotgun, crawls into bed, pulls the covers over him, and he's just terrified. We wonder if he really sleeps at all at this point.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought of was, this isn't unrealistic. He's been kidnapped, attacked. He's completely, he can't trust his environment anymore.
Sure.
And what I found interesting was that the way that Batman kind of phrased this, that there's nothing more valuable than peace, than being able to have a good night's sleep and not being fearful. And it made me think about people that do suffer with chronic anxiety on a daily basis and who can't get a good night's sleep, that they may not necessarily be walking around their home with a shotgun, but they are certainly living in fear, whether it be experiencing panic attacks, worrying about falling asleep because of the nightmares that they're going to have and how horrific they are, mistrusting other people, just certainly, as I said, a very prominent, repeated kind of chronic type of anxiety. And it's absolutely a very difficult way to live. And
it's a justifiable fear in this case. It's not someone who is simply having, these paranoid delusions. This is someone who was kidnapped, whose life was threatened, who was less than a minute away from being killed by a giant mechanical minotaur. And his company represents a game based on the thing that was going to kill him, or rather, the other way around. But that's the inspiration for the thing that was going to kill him.
Right.
I can't imagine that this guy, is it going a step too far to say PTSD? Is it something else?
Well, there's not enough information to know, because remember, PTSD is characterized by a number of symptoms, including intense fear, hypervigilance, being on edge, being tense. We certainly see this with him. There are other symptoms that are associated with PTSD that we just don't know that he has, and those would be the re-experiencing symptoms, like having nightmares, having flashbacks, intrusive thoughts about this, horrific thing that happened to him. We don't know that that's the case. So, I think that there's enough information to show that he's in distress, and that his distress is very much related to his intense fear and anxiety. And as I said, that amount of suffering is very clear, and it's incredibly difficult to deal with. So I think Batman, again, is making a very good point that there's no comparison to this kind of suffering, psychologically.
Let's talk about Batman's response and how the audience is supposed to be perceiving this, because you get the sense that when Robin complains that this guy just walked away with $10 million in his pocket, Batman is basically saying, but don't worry, he got what he deserves. He's like, yeah, he's got $10 million, but he's not sleeping all that well. I mean, clearly we understand that this is Mockridge's comeuppance, but Batman seems to be okay with it.
Well, remember, Batman, his conceptualization is of a just world, right? Bad people, bad things happen to bad people.
Yeah.
Good things happen to good people.
So this is
you take
the
law
justice
into your own hands. So I think that's certainly in line with his conceptualization of right and wrong.
Okay.
So that doesn't surprise me.
Okay. So did you take anything else away from this particular episode?
I'm very curious about Ed Nygma prior to this incident, where his creation was essentially robbed from him. And clearly that was very important to him, that he had basically discovered this product and put together this amazing thing, and somebody stripped him of it.
Yeah.
And that, I think that experience of feeling, I don't know, disenfranchised and dismissed, and I don't know, that certainly has psychological implications. I don't know to the degree that someone would then resort to hostility and violence the way that he did, but you sort of, again, David Wise, who wrote this episode, is very in tune with kind of distressing events and how that impacts people psychologically, and that, people don't just go out and engage in violence and attempted murder, that usually there is this critical event that happens. And in this case, it's one that created this huge, feeling of needing revenge and needing to take down this person that ruined their life, right?
Yeah. I like the episode a lot. I'm very interested in seeing where Nygma takes us the next time we see the Riddler. And I'm very interested to see your take on him the next time we see him, because, as always, we're dealing with these as individual sessions. We've now met him, and we've seen his motivation. We've seen the kinds of things he can do. And now we get to see what he's like when he has not succeeded, but has, in essence, outsmarted the dynamic duo by having been on an airplane long before they could have done anything to him anyway.
Right.
So he was a step ahead. And I don't know, this could be a case of a guy who feels like he may have outsmarted the, Batman and Robin. And I'm very interested to see what happens the next time he comes to town. Well, fantastic episode. Drea, we've got some big announcements. You've got another article up at Comics Alliance, another episode of Gotham. And from what I understand, you're starting to dig the show a little bit more.
I'm going to keep watching Gotham. I would say it's incrementally better each time. Okay. It's just slightly a little better. The characters are certainly coming into their own. Of course, Oswald Cobblepot is quite fascinating, and the way he's written and the way the actor plays this role is quite intriguing.
Robin Lord Taylor is probably the highlight of that show.
Yeah, I would agree. And so, of course, there's a lot of psychopathology, meaning there's a lot of severe mental illness. There's a lot of development into these villains. And I would say that I'm much more interested now than I was when the pilot hit.
Okay. So once again, go to Comics Alliance, where you can read Drea's assessment of Gotham's psychology. Is it right? Is it wrong? You can find out there. And this weekend, just as a reminder, we will be at San Diego Comic Fest there in Mission Valley, just outside of San Diego. We will be having 2 panels. The first panel will be Saturday at noon, and that will be a live episode of our show where you can participate. You can actually be there and ask your questions. We will be focusing on the episode The Joker's Wild, so be sure to watch that ahead of time. It is available on Amazon. I believe it's available on YouTube to purchase, so don't go streaming illegally. And check out the episode. Give us your questions. And if you're unable to be at the convention, send us your questions anyway. We will be more than happy to respond to them if we've got time during the panel. That is Saturday at noon. And then on Sunday at 11 a.m., we will be on a panel with David Gerald where we are discussing the psychology tropes in fiction, what people get right, what people get wrong. And I know that's a panel that you are excited about because you get an opportunity to talk about the things you hate.
In a respectful way.
Yeah.
I will talk about some of the trends and tendencies in writing that folks may not even know that they're making some errors, and it kind of contributes to the misconceptions and the myths about mental health.
Right. So that is exciting. That is at San Diego Comic Fest this weekend, October 18th and 19th. We hope to see you guys there. Drea, where can people find you online?
I'm on Twitter at Arkham Asylum Doc. That's where I am probably the most interactive.
Okay, and then you've also got your website, underthemaskonline.com. You can also email us. We are arkhamsessions@gmail.com. As always, you can find us on Facebook. Be sure to like us and interact with us there. And then, of course, we are at Arkham Sessions over on Twitter. I am at bward028. Join us next week, guys. It's our very first live episode, The Joker's Wild, written by Paul Dini, of course. So that one's going to be a lot of fun. Till then, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
And we are
The Arkham Sessions.